According to Kazakh folktales, their ancestors rose from a golden egg hatched by a magic bird called the samruk in the fork between two branches of a poplar tree. This tree of myth, once the samruk's perch, can be seen standing tall in Nur-Sultan, capital of Kazakhstan. The energy with which the economy has lifted off has injected this new city with a fresh momentum for its development. People from 131 different ethnic groups have come together to mold it into an amazing city of the future. Gulnar Shayamerganova is an international relations researcher. She also practices yoga twice a week.
Йога, она дает не только внешний баланс, но в первую очередь внутренний баланс. Такой же баланс должен быть продемонстрирован и в международных отношениях. Когда принимаются важные решения, необходимо смотреть на баланс, чтобы были на пользу, кого затрагивает данная тема.
Gulnar graduated from the Diplomatic Academy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kazakhstan. She studied at Columbia and Harvard universities in the United States. Since 2012, she has been a researcher on international relations at Nazarbayev University. Nazarbayev University was founded on an initiative of Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev, first president of Kazakhstan, aiming to develop gifted students with international vision. With many world-leading universities as its strategic partners, it has become the country's leading educational establishment. One of the programs that Gulnar is working on at the university is the export of Kazakhstan wheat to Southeast Asia.
Вьетнам. Раньше у Казахстана и Вьетнама практически не было никаких торговых взаимоотношений. Эта страна очень далеко расположена от Казахстана. У нас нет ни общих границ. Не имея выход к морю, это очень лимитирует возможности государства.
Kazakhstan is famous for the good quality of its wheat, with 2/3 of its wheat being exported. However, as a landlocked country, Kazakhstan could not find a route to export its wheat to Southeast Asia. But on September 7th, 2013, a guest from afar enlightened Gulnar.
В 2013 году я работала на Назарбаев университет. И мне посчастливилось стать свидетелем того исторического факта, что председатель Си Цзиньпинь озвучил свою уникальную идею в стенах данного университета. Это произошло здесь, в этом зале.
女士们、先生们、朋友们，为了使欧亚各国经济联系更加紧密，相互合作更加深入，发展空间更加广阔，我们可以用创新的合作模式，共同建设丝绸之路经济带。
Речь председателя Си Цзиньпиня, которая прозвучала в стенах Назарбаев университета, она, конечно, произвела очень большое впечатление на меня.
1 year after the Belt and Road Initiative was proposed, Kazakhstan introduced its own economic policy named Bright Road to upgrade its own transport infrastructure and open more passages to export their goods. Since then, the China Railway Express trains passing through Kazakhstan give proof of the successful alignment of the two policies.
Китай открыл моей стране доступ к океану. Думаю, что не нужно объяснять, что это значит для государства, которое не имеет выхода к морю. Это совершенно новая историческая возможность для развития.
The opening of the China-EU transport links has further inspired Gulnar about what Belt and Road could do for Kazakhstan. It has become the main focus of her research, with over 20 published papers.
Полагаю, что выдвижение Китаем такой глобальной, объединяющей идеи открывает век Азии, символизирует подъем азиатских стран, восточное видение глобализации на новых принципах совместного соразвития и комплементарности.
In 2015, because of her leading role in Belt and Road Studies, Gulnar was invited to set up the China Studies Center of Kazakhstan and to serve as its director. This non-profit think tank aims to push for progress of the Sino-Kazakhstan cooperation through systematic appraisal and informational analysis. This results in better alignment of the country's development with the BRI. Immediately after the center was launched, Gulnar sent a delegation to China to investigate new export routes for Kazakhstan's wheat. They visited Lianyungang, Tianjin, Shanghai, and other major ports. Their reports submitted to the Kazakh government outlined suggestions for reducing transport costs and trimming of custom clearance procedures to help Kazakhstan engage in deeper cooperation with China.
Наш центр единственный в Казахстане, чьи эксперты посетили несколько морских портов в КНР, ориентированных на сотрудничество с Центральной Азией. Поэтому мы хорошо знаем, как на практике развивается инициатива пояса и пути.
On February 5, 2017, a train loaded with over 1,000 tons of Kazakh wheat arrived at China's port city of Lianyungang. The next day, the wheat was loaded and shipped to Vietnam by sea. This was the first time Kazakh wheat had been sold into a Southeast Asian market via China. The Belt and Road Initiative is not simply a road to the west, it is a corridor of prosperity in both directions.
Это показывает новые возможности для экспорта Казахстана в азиатские страны и дает большую перспективу для развития торговых отношений между странами.
The wheat export program is just one of many at the Chinese Studies Center. 2 years on from the start of the center, Gulnar and her colleagues have collaborated with think tanks from China, the United States, Australia and elsewhere, holding roundtable talks and submitting regular reports on the BRI to the Kazakhstan government. Gulnar's reports frequently make observations such as:
Я бы отметила один пояс, один путь как новые широкие возможности развития, новая модель международного сотрудничества и возрождение шелкового пути в 21 веке.
Kenya, in East Africa, is a wildlife wonderland. Here, the charm of the rugged African wilderness is within your reach. The call of the wild reverberates against the hustle and bustle of modernity. Nairobi, the Kenyan capital, was once just a small stop on a rail line up-country. The last 100 years have seen both a flood of immigrants and a boom in tourism. It is now the largest city in East Africa.
My name is Tamၼtရ, and I'm a development economist based in Nairobi. I'm also an independent consultant and work on economic strategy and analysis.
Tamၼtρ was born and raised in Nairobi before going to study in the United States. After graduating, she had the chance to remain there and become a doctor. Instead, she decided to return to Kenya to study economics and devote herself to the development of her country.
I realized that if I was going to become a medical doctor, the only real way for people to afford healthcare is if they have the money to do it. So I then made the decision that perhaps what I should be focusing on is the economy.
Back in Kenya, Tamၼtρ became a consultant, providing economic analysis services to government bodies and private enterprises. An international bank in Nairobi commissioned her to write a report for its small and medium-sized enterprises clients in Africa on aligning their businesses with the BRI.
So one of the clients we support in Kenya in the manufacturing sector is really interested in the works you have done so far.
They were not the first clients to seek advice from her. In the last few years, the BRI has become a frequent topic of conversation in East Africa.
people always want to understand, what is China doing in Africa? What do you think about it? What's your opinion? So I'm finding that it's just becoming a part of the conversation all the time. Just the other day, I was interviewed by a radio show called The Monocle, and they were looking at Russia in Africa, but it ended up being about China.
In 2018, Anzetse joined the Africa Policy Institute, or API, shifting her focus from broad economics to the specifics of the BRI. The API is a 20-year-old think tank geared towards economics and government management studies. Most of its scholars have experience in Sino-African relations. Working at the API, Anzetse's research has yielded remarkable results. Her works, such as the report she wrote for the African Development Bank, Kenya National Development Strategy for 2018 to 2023, received much attention. Anzetse has become one of the leading economists at the Institute. However, when Anzetse began her studies, she found her understanding of the BRI was really quite superficial.
So my first initial reaction was, okay, fine, you want to build infrastructure, but how does this link to African development? The connection just wasn't there. It was more about, this is what China wants to do, and Africa has this tiny role.
With this in mind, she carried out an in-depth study of the BRI and found in it a brand new initiative that would stimulate African growth.
The Europe and North American governments still view Africa as a poor, disease-ridden, very corrupt country. But countries like China, they see Africa as a big market. There's a lot of economic opportunity.
To see how SMEs can make best use of the initiative, she is taken to the Mombasa-Nairobi Standard Gauge Railway for a survey of the route. The new railway is the largest infrastructure project since Kenya's independence. It is also one of the major fruits of the BRI in Africa. Since opening in 2017, it has transported nearly 250,000 passengers, with average daily occupancy rate exceeding 97%. 10 freight trains per day travel back and forth between Nairobi and the port city of Mombasa. The ceramic factory Anzetse visits has been built and funded by a private Chinese company. The factory covers over 26 hectares. With an investment of $56 million, it has 2 production lines and employs 1,200 people, of whom 90% are locals. Alex Gerishom is the administrative manager.
Now tell me a bit about your transport. How has the SGR helped you? What was it like before the SGR and now?
You see, initially when we were doing the construction, we depended a lot on road transport to transport our machines from Mombasa to here. And sometimes it would take so many days. But when SGR came in, things changed.
The Mombasa-Nairobi Railway has cut transport time in half. Anzetse found that the railway not only helps the struggling local SMEs breathe, but also drives up the land prices and adds momentum to Kenya's economy. The Mombasa-Nairobi Railway is just one of many cooperative projects between China and Africa. Since the BRI was introduced, China and Africa have joined hands to build large numbers of roads, bridges, railways, power stations and ports, all helping to break the logjam of African development. What Anzetse saw deepened her understanding of the BRI. After 3 months, she finished her report for the bank. She then used the media to call on African governments to take bolder steps to better align themselves with the opportunities of the BRI.
Now, infrastructure development is key for Africa's growth and development.
So for me, really, the biggest advantage of BRI is to, 1, meet our infrastructure deficit in a manner that does not increase the debt too much, but 2, really interconnect it in a meaningful way.
All right.
Nowadays, Anzetse has become a leading expert in the field of BRI studies. In many of her reports, we can frequently read sentences like,
The best way forward for BRI is to link to the African Continental Free Trade Area and help Africa's vision to connect all our markets.
The River Nile winds its way across the African continent to the Mediterranean coast. In a miracle attested to for thousands of years, the river endows Egypt with the waters on which great civilizations have flourished in a land that is 90% desert. At the southern end of the Nile Delta sits Cairo. 10 million people forged this Egyptian capital into the largest city in North Africa and the Middle East. The historic city, epitome of ancient Egyptian and Arabic civilizations, is now the stage for spectacular changes. At 35, Ahmed Al-Said is the head of a publishing company in Egypt. Today, he is hosting a Sino-Egyptian Cultural Publishing Corporation Forum. Al-Said speaks fluent Chinese, the language he studied when he was in college.
ممكن نقول ان الموضوع كان عند كده مع الاهل ان هم مصرين ان يبقى ان انا ادرس حاجه تخص الطب او العلوم او كده فرحت عشان اقدم في قسم لغه المانيه لقيت قسم اللغه الصينيه فتح فدخلت ادرس.
In 2010, Ahmed went to Ningxia University for his master's degree. There he had the idea of starting a publishing company to introduce Arab countries to the achievements made by China since its reform and opening up.
احنا كعرب بنعرف كل حاجه عن الصين من خلال الغرب والصينيين بيعرفوا كل حاجه عن المنطقه العربيه من خلال الاعلام الغربي فما كانش في اطلاقا تواصل مباشر بين الطرفين فدايما عندي امل او حلم ان انا اقدر اعبر عن ده بشكل مكتوب في شكل كتاب اقدمه لكل القراء العرب ان هم من خلاله يتعرفوا بشكل اكبر على الصين.
With this idea in mind, in 2011, Ahmed set up his own company. But the business had a bumpy start.
مرة مثلا كان عندنا أزمة في الكتاب الطبع غلط وكان في مشكلة فاضطرينا إن إحنا نعوض دار النشر تقريبا $10,000 في الوقت ده فكلهم استلفناهم من بره.
In the moment of crisis, Ahmed found his way out. He decided to write a book from an Arab perspective on the Chinese way of thinking and how the Chinese people had made the right choices for their development in the era after reform and opening up.
国家主席习近平23号下午在人民大会堂北大厅举行仪式。
In 2013, the BRI was first proposed. The next year witnessed by the two heads of state that general bilateral relations between China and Egypt were officially upgraded to comprehensive strategic partnership. Chinese and Egyptian companies began a new wave of cooperation in such fields as energy, communication, and environmental protection. China has already become Egypt's largest trading partner. With the influence of the BRI, by the end of 2013, Al-Said's book, China's Development Path, Miracle and the Secret, became a bestseller. The economic miracle of China made a big impression on Egypt's officials, scholars, and ordinary people.
بيخليه يتأكد ويثق مبادرة الحزام والطريق مش استراتيجية سياسية قد ما هي فرصة جديدة لخلق وتنمية مجتمع أفضل ومستقبل أفضل للعالم.
The success of the book helped Ahmed's company emerge from its financial troubles. Compared with the 3 employees at the start, it now has 135 employees and 4 subsidiaries in 4 Arab countries.
بالنسبة لي زي ما أكون أنا دكتور مثلا وفتحوا لي مستشفى زي ما أكون مهندس وعملوا لي مكتب أقدر أقدم فيه الرسومات بتاعتي فأكتر حاجة عملت تحول في الشركة إن إحنا اللي إحنا بنعمله بقى متوافق مع اللي الصين بتعمله.
In early 2019, Ahmed took part in the annual Cairo International Book Fair. 740 publishing houses from 35 countries were represented. Ahmed not only promoted titles like Xi Jinping, the Governance of China, Interpreting the Belt and Road Initiative, and 100 questions and answers about the Belt and Road Initiative, but also presented a large number of Chinese textbooks and children's books. Today, over 90% of Chinese books circulating in the Arab market are published by Ahmed Al-Said's company. These works bring Arab countries and China closer together. In January 2019, following a proposal from Ahmed, Egypt opened its own Belt and Road Cooperation Research Center. Jointly established by China's Renmin University and Egypt's Ain Shams University, the board of directors is led by the chairman of the Planning and Budget Committee of the House of Representatives of Egypt and is composed of leading academics, politicians, and business figures. Ahmed is the youngest member of the board, in charge of liaison with China.
我的人生的一半跟中国有关系，所以我希望表达的、说的、写的、翻译的很多。我想用自己的声音来给别人讲中国的故事，真正的中国。
After years of working on cultural exchanges between China and the Arab nations, Ahmed describes the BRI like this.
وفي التعاون العربي الصيني دائما تأتي الثقافة أولا. الضمانة الأولى لتحقيق أي تعاون جيد على الحزام والطريق هو تواصل الشعوب.
The ancient city of Rome wakes up in the morning to church bells as birds fly over the dome of the Pantheon or quench their thirst by the Trevi fountain. From ancient imperial capital to Renaissance hub, the human population of the Eternal City has lived with its greatness for generations. Today, its 3 million people are pursuing new modern destinies among their ancient glories.
I'm Francesca Manenti, I'm 31 years old. I'm originally from Milan in the north of Italy, but now I live in Rome.
6 years ago, Francesca went to Rome, where she studied economic security and geopolitics for a master's degree. On graduation, she joined the Italian Institute for International Studies, working as a senior researcher.
Rome has always been my dream city. I moved here 6 years ago, and now I walk to the office every morning at 9 because we have our morning briefing with colleagues that is just like a brainstorming for analysis. So then we start work.
The Italian Institute for International Studies was founded in 2004.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno. This independent think tank provides data and strategic decision analysis for clients around the world. It also cooperates with its partners to hold seminars. Recently, Francesca and her colleagues have been preparing to launch a new research program based on the Belt and Road Initiative.
La conferenza di lancio di Shang. Io ho preparato una copia del concept paper.
Allora, per la location io sono incline a fare qualcosa di un po' più leggero.
Ok, abbiamo un mese per preparare il lancio di Shang.
This is the biggest project to fall into Francesca's hands since she joined the Institute. The name of the program is the Chinese character Xiang, meaning towards. The program focuses on exploring the potential of the Belt and Road Initiative for Italy. When Francesca joined the Institute 6 years ago, her research interests were Asia-Pacific affairs. However, her work was never taken as seriously as today. Up to now, she still remembers the first report she published on China.
It was about the realpolitik, the so-called realpolitik between China and India. My point was that they had so many differences, but then there are some strategic interests that urge them to find in some way convergences.
To her disappointment, after the report was published, it received little attention from Italian society. At that time, Italy was deeply embroiled in a financial crisis. People had no time to look further afield.
You know, the 2013 maybe is the most difficult year for Italy during the economic crisis. It was a different period. Asia was perceived as far away. There were maybe not a lot of interest involved on that topic. So it was, you know, not really a success.
3 months after the publication of her report, China proposed the Belt and Road Initiative. The world looked to China again, and Francesca found a new topic of interest, the BRI.
Unfortunately, at that time, we were not so aware of what Belt and Road could be, so we keep studying it during months after month.
Over the following 4 years, Francesca published 14 more research reports on China. She focused on the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, on China's economic and foreign policies, and the impacts of the BRI on Italy and Europe.
I think that it's really like a game changer, something really new that gives a new framework for one very important thing, that is connectivity.
By 2017, the Italian economy had begun to recover. In February of that year, Sergio Mattarelli, the president of Italy, paid a state visit to China. The two countries agreed to bring their bilateral relationship to a higher level. 2 years later, in March 2019, Chinese President Xi Jinping paid a state visit to Italy. The two sides signed a memorandum of understanding on the Belt and Road Initiative to deepen economic cooperation between China and Italy. Italy became the first G7 member to join the BRI.
So it was the first time that we saw a window of opportunity to increase and improve our work specifically on China.
At the same time, the Xiang program, launched by the Italian Institute for International Studies, entered its planning phase.
E quindi ho pensato di fare una cosa del genere.
Bello, mi piace l'ideogramma colorato poi con il verde cesi.
Sì, questo poi è fatto a mano, quindi...
Bello, sì. After so many years, we're not aware about the possibility to look eastward. We would like to give to public opinion and stakeholders all the keys of interpretation for funding this new direction.
The idea of using the Chinese character Xiang as the theme for the launch event comes from Francesca. She summarizes her understanding of the BRI with 4 keywords.
Innovative, comprehensive, worldwide, idealistic.
A temperate maritime climate means the British winter is never short of rain. But when the sun comes out, London appears in all its magnificence once again. The city today has a population of close to 9 million. They come from around the world and speak more than 300 languages, sharing the inclusiveness of this cosmopolitan metropolis. 82-year-old Professor Martin Albro is a sociologist. In more than half a century, he has been focusing on international issues like globalization.
I work on issues connected with the future of human society, globalization, and I like to think that I can contribute to making the world a better place.
In his academic field, Professor Albro is known as the pioneer of the globalization theory. In the 1990s, he wrote The Global Age, State and Society Beyond Modernity, establishing his leading position in globalization studies. He served as president of the British Sociological Association and was founding editor of International Sociology, a prestigious international journal. Although retired, Martin has never given up his interest in global issues.
In the panic that followed Lehman's bankruptcy, the worst of the financial crisis was just getting started.
Of the recession that followed,
housing prices started to fall.
Bubble kept growing bigger and bigger.
It's been more than 20 years since globalization theory was introduced to the world, which has since seen many massive changes. Martin feels these give a new perspective to his research.
I think we're in a more dangerous place, the world, than it has been for quite some time. And one of the reasons is globalization, because what globalization, in particular economic globalization, does is it puts strains upon every national economy. And in particular, it increases inequality.
In April 2015, a promotion for the book Xi Jinping, The Governance of China was held in London. Martin was invited to speak at the event. Reading the book, Martin learned about the BRI for the first time.
I think it was probably a year or so before I really focused on it and thought, this is something interesting. And then, obviously, reading his speeches, you realized, wow, this is important.
After the event, Martin started a new research project, a comparative study on globalization and the Belt and Road Initiative, based on Xi Jinping's book.
There are many criticisms of Belt and Road from different quarters, but they're all the product of fear. They're all the product of the sense that the world order is changing, that the West has lost its domination. That objection arises out of the tensions in the West, which are the result of globalization. It's not the result of Belt and Road. As I say, Belt and Road is actually different from globalization. It uses globalization.
During his research, Martin met with many visiting scholars from China. He would often invite them to visit Crystal Palace Park in South London.
This is one of the most iconic places in the history of globalization, because in 1851, the Great Exhibition was held in Hyde Park in the middle of London. But the spirit of Crystal Palace was a spirit of globalization. It was like a continuation of the Silk Road. And now we have Belt and Road, and the spirit of the Silk Road is in Belt and Road. So this is the continuation of a global history.
Professor Albro began his new project in 2016. At the age of 79, he started learning Chinese and reading a great many books.
It was he who argued that the peasantry, the Chinese peasantry, ought to have the advantage of growing crops for themselves and benefiting from that, as well as contributing to the communal pot.
Over the following 2 years, Martin interacted with scholars from many different fields, drawing inspiration from the clashes of ideas. He published his conclusions in a monograph, China's role in a shared human future towards theory for global leadership. On April 15, 2018, a book launch took place at the London Book Fair for Martin's new volume. The book has 14 chapters, the first 4 of which elaborate on Albro's interpretations of the Belt and Road Initiative. In his book, Martin argues that the Belt and Road Initiative is more a philosophy of history than a program of action. He also writes, the Belt and Road Initiative is showing the world a preeminently practical way forward with the greatest chance of significant progress in achieving them at the present time.
I do think that one of the most important ways of approaching contemporary global problems is to treat them in terms of projects and goals. And this is what One Belt, One Road does. There is, though, a lesson, I think, for beyond One Belt, One Road for global governance. And global governance, to my mind, should be concerned with the major global issues which confront humankind.
After the book was published, Professor Albro continued with his sociological studies. Whenever asked about his opinion about the BRI, he answers with words to this effect.
When you talk about a shared human future, you talk about the things that we can do together in the future, not a future where we're all the same.
Indonesia, for example, Kazakhstan in Central Asia, Pakistan, Iran, but also lots of African countries. And I think even Latin America really is part of the Belt and Road.
Pour moi, cette initiative Belt and Road, c'est quelque chose d'innovant, de juste et au fond de pacifique.
Может быть, впервые в мировой истории стратегические интересы великой державы совпали со стратегическими интересами человечества в целом.
A number of countries have listened, a number of countries are paying attention, and it is making sense in Africa. Africa is getting to understand it.
Because it believes in connectivity, it believes in win-win proposition for the region. It believes in helping the developing and underdeveloping states.
That is not just between parties at the end of the road, but if they're in the middle of it, that they too are participating.
Because there are still a lot of countries, even geographically not located on the Belt and Road, but they want to participate. They want to join in.
I describe it as China's relationship with the world, China's conversation